topic today that I'd like to go through is how to get on the air with a limited budget. And what I want to do is a little bit of level setting, make some recommendations, provide what I call rules of thumb, and then get some recap, and that's where we'll do some Q&A. I have 3 appendices in the back that have the lists of all the clubs in the state, some other information. I don't intend to go through that today. Look at it when you get home or when you get access to the PowerPoint or the PDF, because there's links in there and also when the clubs meet, which is kind of important. So I want to talk a little bit about the objective today, some assumptions I'm making. I want to discuss ham radio a little bit. Are any of you newly licensed, like within the last year? Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So this is really directed for you, for some of the people that have been licensed for a little bit longer. They may know some of this stuff. And then I want to get a starting point, and then we'll go from there. So my objective is really to get you involved in ham radio activities. The reason I want to do this is once you're involved, you're going to become engaged in ham radio. The way you're going to do this is get on the air. And get on the air has a bunch of things that happen with it. If you've never been on the air, you've got jitters and you're nervous about it. And you're afraid you're going to screw up. I was exactly like that. But when you get on the air, you gain the experience. And with that experience, you'll find the things that you're interested in, the activities and the modes that you'd like. The result of that is your satisfaction, which is really important to all of us from a personal standpoint. But what I'm hoping is that your satisfaction will lead you to be able to pay it forward in a couple of years for somebody else that's a new person, a newcomer to the hobby. So I need to start with some assumptions. And I'm starting with, you are or soon will be licensed. You have little or no capability today. That means no radios, no antennas. I want to define what get on the air means. It means that part of the conversation you have actually goes through airwaves using ham radio equipment. Doesn't have to be the whole conversation or the whole path, but it has to be part of it. Budgets. Budgets are very personal. And they're also depends upon where you are in your life. My budget was way different when I had 3 kids at home, and I'm also trying to pay for college and all of that than it is when I'm retired. So your budget does change, and it's very personal. Mine is different than yours. I'm assuming that you're motivated. You want to do this. And I'm also assuming that you have some access to the internet. You may not, and I'll point out the areas where that's impacted, but let's assume you have access to the internet. So, ham radio is a river of opportunities that is deep and wide. There's all this stuff that you can do. Our bands range from 2,200 meters to 1 millimeter. Our activities in terms of modes range from CW to voice to digital modes to even visual modes with slow scan and ATV. Our activities, we might like to just talk to people. We might like to get into technical conversations. We might like to, what we call chase paper, which is get your DXCC awards, VUCC awards. We might like radio sports, contesting. We might choose to do this for other reasons, such as public service with Aries and Skywarn and Racies. We may set up in our house. We may set up mobile. We may set up portable. We may operate from AC mains. We may operate from a battery. We may operate from solar power. Lots of different things. This river of opportunities is really deep and wide. The bottom line on it is, very simply, the bottom line is, whatever you do as a ham radio operator, you're going to find a way to communicate with others through the hobby. So part of this is also to know yourself. This is ask yourself the who, what, where, why, when, how kinds of questions. Who do you want to communicate with? What bands and modes? Where will you operate? Are you going to operate in your house, or are you going to operate in your car? Are you going to operate portably? When will you operate? What time of the day? And here's something I'll make as an observation. For those of you that have family at home, this can be tied to family and career. And I just make an observation here, family first. I took 15 years away from the hobby to raise a family. And I don't regret that. I wish I could have been in the hobby, but I don't regret raising the family part of it. So family first. Why is real easy. You're here, you're motivated, you want to do this. But how on a budget? That's the key question. That's what we're going to try and answer today. So this is where I'm going to make some recommendations. And the first recommendation is an example of what not to do, or you probably have done it, but that's okay. But I want to use it to highlight a point, and then we'll make some recommendations. So the very common path after getting a license is you get on the air by buying VHF, UHF. You can buy a handy talkie or a mobile rig. You might decide to get on the air with HF, and you purchase a transceiver, you build an antenna, you get feed line, you get the power supply, you get it all put together. If you look at this, there's investments here of for some people, some very significant amount of dollars. And the question that I'm going to ask you here is a real simple one. How do you know you're going to like the mode? Well, here's a basic HT. Very simple. Just a box that might have an AC power supply or charger. That's real simple. Here's a basic mobile rig. Well, you got to have a car or a bicycle, but you have to have something to put your antenna on. You didn't believe that the car was there to be the antenna mount, but it truly is if you're a ham radio operator. You need to hook up the battery, so it gets a little bit more complicated. Basic HF transceiver, well, this is a little bit more complicated because you need power supplies. And depending upon what you choose to do, it could be a battery, but then you need a charger for the battery. Oh, by the way, you'll need an antenna, feed line. If you're going to have an antenna, you're going to need something to hold the antenna up in the air. It's not like it was for me when I was a kid in the 60s, where I held up the rabbit ears on the TV set and twisted them around so Dad could get a good picture on the TV. You don't do that. You do that in some cases, but not in every single case. So you need to get other stuff with this. And how do you make those choices and decisions? My question is real simple. How do you do that without gaining some experience? How do you know you're even going to like the activities associated with HF? You don't until you try them. So here's the recommendation. First and foremost, join a club. Look for a club that has their own radio equipment, that has their own radio station, and there are a number of them around. Look for clubs that may loan equipment out so you can try that equipment and try the mode. Find out if you like it or not before you buy anything. Now, yeah, there's a little bit of investment, typically $20 to $35 annually. But that's a real cheap investment because it gives you access to a number of people in the club that you can talk to, you can ask questions of. And quite frankly, they'll tell you all kinds of things. And they'll give you advice. Some of it you might take with a grain of salt because it doesn't apply. Some of it may apply directly to you. So you have to ask questions, and that's a good thing. So ultimately, in my mind, the bottom line here is a club is the best investment you can have. And the Appendix A has got the list of the ARRL associated clubs in the state of Minnesota. So if you're from outstate Minnesota, I didn't just put down the Twin Cities clubs. There should be a club hopefully nearby, relatively nearby. The second thing that you can do is once you've gone to the club, you can ask questions. Can I see or operate the station? Now, some clubs may not have equipment, but they have activities such as POTA activities or special event stations, or they might run contests. participate in contests. These are really good activities to get involved in to learn how to operate or to actually get some skills operating. It helps you get over the jitters of that first contact. And pretty soon it's second nature. Now, a couple of things here. You'll be able to operate a station with guidance, which is a good thing. You can get through that first QSO jitters. The point here is that you're able to gain experience to make better decisions about where you want to invest your money. This is sort of like the financial planner kind of thing. Where do you want to invest your money? Well, you need to make decisions. This is kind of the deal. But the bottom line here is you're seeing, touching, doing, gaining that experience, and you'll find out what you like to do. You might find out that HF and all that static really stinks, and you don't want to do that. You want to have clear FM communication, so you're up in VHF, UHF. Hey, perfectly fine. Hobby's wide enough to support it. Now, another thing that you can do is ask for help. The classic example that I would give here is if you're first time, brand new ham, and you want to put up an antenna. Well, okay. So my first question is, well, where are you going to put it up? Well, you're going to put it up in the air, but what are you going to hook it up to? This is where asking for advice and having somebody come out and help you is very useful. Primarily, that first line, look out for power lines. I mean, power lines and antennas are not good things. They don't mix. But here's the other thing. If you're putting up an HF station, you're putting up a wire antenna, which is what most everybody starts with, you probably have built that. And if you built it, you have to tune it. And guess what? You can tune it without any test equipment, but the antenna analyzers and VNAs are really, really helpful. And it would be nice to ask for advice and help for somebody who has a VNA to help you tune the antenna. So it's resonant. That's pretty cool. Well, I'm approaching, let's see, how do I want to put this? I'm approaching my 8th decade, 70 years old, that would be 8th decade, wouldn't it? So I'm approaching my 8th decade. I don't climb trees anymore. I just don't do that. But if you have to climb a tree or you have to get a line in the air, how can you do it? Well, do you know somebody who has an arborist bag to throw over the top? Do you know somebody who might have a drone or a pneumatic line launcher? If you know somebody that ask for help. Sooner or later, you're going to have to put connectors on coax. To be very honest with you, the coax prep tools are an expense from a tool perspective. And there's a lot of clubs that actually have the coax prep tools that they'll loan out so you can put ends on your coax. And it makes it just remarkably easier. And guess what? The connectors actually do work. So it's really important. If you're doing kit building, there's at least 2 clubs in the state of Minnesota that are around building things. There might be specialized things that you need, like spectrum analyzer or something like that. These people might have those specialized things. They might be able to give you guidance on which kit to use or not to choose, on ease of build or construction. Bottom line, in asking for help, you're getting on the air, you're getting help from somebody else who's been there, done that, and you're using tools and accessories with their supervision. So you get to do something with something that you've never done before. Now, along the way, you might find out, oh man, these coax tools are really good, or the VNA is really good. I need to get a VNA. That gets put on the list. Is it your highest priority or not? Hey, that's a budgeting decision, but at least you've tried it out to know that it's going to be of value to you, rather than just going out and getting it. So, when I started this, I was starting with the presumption that a limited budget was you have to get on the air for less than $100. That's where I was starting. And so I went down this path of here's a lesson that's kind of learned. I can get a $90 HT on the internet from one of the big box vendors. However, The keys are too dang small and I can't program it. So I need to get my $47 programming cable and software. The manual's too long. I don't want to read it. Well, I can get this nifty one for 16 bucks. The antenna is a dummy load. It doesn't really put out, so I need to spend money on a new antenna that gives me longer reach. The charger's fine, but man, having that drop-in charger, just put it in, it works really fast. It's an hour. Oh, that's really cool. Need one of them. And oh, I walk around when I talk, and boy, having the mic and headset would be really good. Okay, these things are all very good from a marketing standpoint because you can pick and choose what you want. The bottom line here is that the real cost is $231 for this $90 handy talkie. The point here is that you have to walk around and look at what you're buying in terms of the total package of what you want to do and consider that as part of your budgeting. How do you do that? You gain experience. How do you do that? You go back to the club and you find out people that will help let you operate. We'll show you the equipment, let you get hands-on experience. So rather than spend that $100 on an HT, if you're really budget constrained, keep in mind that there's internet protocols like Echolink, IRLP, and other technologies that connect to repeaters around the world. If you have a license, you can get software downloads, and you can use this from your smartphone, from your computer, from a tablet. You can connect through the Echolink to a repeater somewhere else. You can talk to people somewhere else. Two things. This is actually getting on the air because you are going across ham radio equipment at one part of the conversation. And it may not be at your end of the conversation where you're talking through the internet, but it will be at the other end. That's one thing. The second thing is that this does require internet access. If you're like a friend of mine who's in very, very rural Minnesota, on a township road that's a gravel road that's way out there, who doesn't have good internet access, this is not an option for him. On the other hand, the $90 HT can get him into the local repeater. But if you're starting out and you have the internet access, consider this. You'll get to meet lots of people. You'll talk to a lot of people. You'll find out a lot of stuff about the hobby. And you may find out, somebody will tell you, oh, you know, I did this exciting thing with satellites the other day, and I used this and this, and I was using my HT and I did this. You might find out things that you want to do in ham radio. It's wide open. So consider, instead of buying the radio, if you're seriously budget constrained, consider the Echolink or some of the internet protocols. The bottom line here is that you're getting on the air, you're communicating with hams, and it can be locally. There's a lot of repeaters that have Echolink locally, and it can be nationally, and it can be worldwide. 14545 has a handy hams net that's held every day at, it's either 11 or noon, depending upon daylight savings or not. But there are hams around the nation, and we have some worldwide that come in on that net. That's the power of Echolink. Some things hold true no matter what. The KISS principle is one of them. Whatever you want to do, focus on your minimal need first. And if you're going to do an HF, you'll need a transceiver, you'll need some sort of power supply, you'll need feed line, antenna. Well, if you're going to do phone, you're going to need a microphone. If you're going to do CW, you need a key. If you're going to do digital, you need a computer to drive it. Okay, that's the minimal thing that you need. And focus on the minimal need. When you're visiting somebody's shack and you're looking at this wall of equipment, and we collect equipment. Over a period of time, we tend to collect lots of equipment, and we tend to stack it up in the shack. Ask the question, the simple question, if you're looking at something, okay, where does this radio go? Does the coax go straight out to the antenna, or does it go someplace else? Does it go to this, this watt meter? Does it go to this SWR bridge? Does it go to an antenna tuner? What are the things along the way that get you there? And you'll find out that there's a lot more stuff involved, potentially a lot more stuff involved. That's hard to explain, but it's way easier to experience. And then you can ask the question, well, why did you put a watt meter there? Why didn't you put it here or here? You can ask those kinds of questions, and you'll get answers that will explain a little bit about where things belong in terms of radio context, but also about how to design a radio station for yourself personally. So that's kind of important. But there's a lot of stuff that could be in there. My point is focus on your minimal needs to start with. So I want to get into some rules of thumb here. And they belong into a couple of places where I want to talk about purchasing. I want to talk about the decibel a little bit, the real technical part of this presentation, something about software and towers, and then selling equipment. So if you're going out and buying equipment, I'd strongly urge you to do your homework. Look for reviews. DX Engineering has got a wonderful catalog out there. It's got color, pictures, and everything. And it's just like candy. I mean, oh, I really want this. I could use that, but do you really need that? Is it important to get it? Look at the product reviews. The ARRL comes out with just absolutely wonderful product reviews. And by the way, I need to plug them for this. If you heard in the conference just before lunch, the ARRL is the only national organization out there for all hams in all modes. They do a lot of good stuff, and one of them is the reviews. Product reviews are just top-notch technically. They won't tell you, don't buy this equipment. They'll tell you that the receiver's floor is this many dB. And if you look at the numbers, it's way different than everybody else, and you can make the decision yourself that, yes, they didn't say it was less than optimal, but you can tell that. But the other thing too is sometimes manufacturers will reprint those things so you can see what the ARRL tested, and they do a really good job. Sherwood Engineering also has receiver test data that you can look at. This is all very technical stuff. It's only associated with the receiver, where the ARRL will deal with the transmitter side of things as well. I'd also recommend the ad hoc reviews at eham.net. They're not going to be the technical kinds of things. They're going to be the things like, this knob is too big for my hand or too small for my hand. Now, you may not know that, but if you ever get an opportunity to see that particular radio and touch the knob, you'll know right away that the guy was right. Or, you know, it might be he's just got a huge hand. We don't know those things, but it gives you more information for you to go look at, touch, and feel to see if it's something that is of interest to you. Let's see. Better turn this right side up. This is real key. Buy the best you can afford within the budget you have. If it's new equipment, look at the big box ham radio stores for that, and the manufacturers. Keep in mind that the manufacturers have coupons during the year, especially around Christmas time. So they'll give, on high dollar items, they'll give $100 or $200 discounts and coupons on them. If $100 matters, which it does, then you might wait a month or two for a coupon. If you buy new, please, please, please try and keep the packing material that it came in and the manuals, etc. Just all that stuff. If you have any warranty work or need to send it back for repair, you can use those boxes. But if that, quite frankly, it doesn't happen that often. If you decide that you want to sell it later on, having the original boxes will allow you to charge a premium price on selling it on resale. So hang on to them. By the way, that's one of the toughest things to do because you got to figure out a place to put them. If it's used equipment, there's two major places that you can search for used equipment on the internet. One of them is swapqth.com, swap.qth.com. KA9FOX down in La Crosse runs qth.com web hosting, and he puts that board up as a service to all hams. The second one is qrz.com. Now, qrz.com is a subscription service, but if you pay for the subscription, one of the things you can get access to is their hot swap pages. These are very good for identifying things that are available for purchase. Consider swap nets. The one in the metro area that, well, not everybody. The one in the metro area is the 7-6 swap shop on Saturday mornings at 9:30, the 14676 repeater. You have something you want to sell, put it out there. If you're looking for something, put that out there. Don't forget Craigslist, Facebook, and other buy, sell, swap places. Craigslist, if you look up ham radio, has got a significant amount of listings, a surprising number of listings. It's not everybody lists there, but you can see something local for Minneapolis. Likewise, whoops, sorry, Navy bells. Facebook, for example, has a group. That group is a Minnesota group. It has several other statewide groups and national groups that you can look at. The bottom line here is please see the safe tips out there on how to do good trading. A lot of people accept PayPal, and a lot of people want to do friends and family, but if you're buying something, the safest thing to do is to pay the additional 3% so you can return, so you can dispute, that sort of thing. If you're friends and family, you can't do that. So please pay attention to some of those tips. Sooner or later, you're gonna go to a ham fest, a place where you can buy, sell, or trade equipment. People will have lots of stuff up to sell. Take a friend or an Elmer. Elmer is ham radio language for mentor. It's real simple. That second set of eyes will see things that you may not. They will also keep you from buying the first thing that you see, maybe, unless it's a really good deal. Trust but verify. There's a guy that I know that comes in with a battery and some test equipment to test the transceiver because he got burned once. Now, do you have to do that? This is why having an Elmer there to talk through questions like, well, when was the last time this radio was on the air? You know, did you, if it's a really old radio that has paper capacitors, did you recap the equipment? Yeah, and Elmer would know that necessarily, but not necessarily a first year ham. The key thing here is the best finds to find are early in the ham fest. The best deals are at the end of the ham fest. Okay, I've had stuff at Hamfest, and I tell people it's the old country western song from the 90s. The girls are always prettier at closing time. Well, the prices are better deals at closing time. If you have a $500 budget and there's a $600 item that you want, make that offer for $500 early on. The guy might accept it. He might say, no, I got to try and get top dollar for this. But come back just before it closes. If that radio is there, make that offer for $500 again. I'll bet you the guy takes the $500 because he doesn't want to take the radio home, and it's your radio. But keep in mind, you got to make the offer. And it's free enterprise here. By free enterprise is you can make ridiculous offers. And sometimes somebody will say, oh, yep, go ahead. Or they might say, well, no, I just took this off the air yesterday, you know? So it's a place where you can dicker, have fun. Coax purchases. Okay, obviously at $49 per 100 feet, the RG 58 AU is the best deal out there. But is it? Here's the attenuation numbers for it. Now keep in mind that a 3 dB attenuation, this is the technical part of the conversation. 3 dB attenuation means that if I put 100 watts in on one end, 50 watts comes out the other end. So depending upon the frequency you're at, RG58 may not be a good deal for you if you're running UHF at 440. On the other hand, do you gain much by using RG8X at HF frequencies for that price performance? So pay attention and focus on what the dB attenuation is. It's important. So what would you choose for HF, VHF, and UHF? And you'll choose something different. And oh, by the way, if your VHF run happens to be 500 feet, you might not choose any of these. You might choose, there might be better things to do. Go to the Northern Lights Club and go to the Aurora Conference and ask them what they do. Because there are guys that run 1.2 gigahertz and they run it 500 feet away from their shack. Well, how do they do it? They don't put the 1.2 gigahertz in at the shack. They run intermediate frequencies out to transverters at the antenna site. So sooner or later, you're going to buy and install software, and you're going to put it all over the place. I've got stuff on my smartphone that I use. There's software available for everything. That's the good news. A lot of it is free or open source. Some of it is commercial, so you'll pay money for it. My preferences are to look for open source and multi-platform kinds of software. I look for one-time license fee. My logging software has a one-time license fee for me. I have it on my computer in my shack, and I have it on my laptop for doing parks on the air. Okay, one fee. The gotcha here is that trying to get all of these parts to work together, such as WSJTX, plus your logging software, or FLDigi, if you're doing digital modes, can be kind of cumbersome. And this is where having a club, having people to refer to and ask them, hey, have you done this? What did you do? Is very, very helpful. I have to mention, for some, Nirvana. I want to have a tower and I want to put a big beam up on that tower. If you go down this path, it's an expensive path. You can budget for it, but you also have to have an understanding of a lot of technical things like wind and ice loading. You need to understand your zoning and building codes and permitting process. Find somebody in your city or locality who has done it before you to find out what they had to do. It's amazing what happens. If you're going to raise a 150-pound antenna up 72 feet up in the air, you do not go to Home Depot and buy their little pulley and their little chunk of rope. You have to buy rigging. And if you think the cost per foot of coax is expensive, look at the cost for rigging. The pulleys and the blocks are on the order of $30 to $50 for the least expensive ones out there. But if you got 4 people standing underneath it and the rope's going to break and it's going to collapse and crush them, maybe you want to spend the money on that rope. Keep in mind, add that to your budget list. And then you need to understand your annual budget for annual maintenance, because you do need to tension things that are guide wires. You need to tension. You need to check the bolts out on every section as you go up and down. You need to look at it. And there's a lot of maintenance that goes on. So budget for it. Sooner or later, you've got equipment and you'll collect it. Don't be afraid to sell equipment. If you're not using it, sell it. By the way, this is something my wife has really been on since we've retired, has been on a very, very big kick with me. If you're not getting pleasure from it, get rid of it, because I don't want to have to deal with it afterwards, kind of thing. It's a good point. Turn it into some cash. Why? because I can use the sale and the proceeds of that to buy something better, which I've done. And keep in mind that you can ask for a high end of price on the used price range, particularly if you have the boxes and the manuals. And then the other thing that I would say is if you have a particular antenna that you bought for that particular rig, package the deal together. Try and sell the antenna with it. Why? If that antenna works with that radio and just works, you don't have to do anything else, and you have to do other things to get that particular microphone or whatever device to work with that radio. That means you have to spend money. Try and package the whole thing together and sell the whole package. I recently sold an entire POTA station that had an HF rig, an antenna tuner inside the carrying case. The reason I packaged it all was because I knew that I could sell the package at a reasonable price and somebody was going to get a built, ready-made POTA station. And they loved it and I loved it. The other thing is, all the places that you can buy stuff, you can sell stuff. So sell there. So let's go through some quick review and then we'll get to questions. You can get into ham radio for less than $100. You can. But what I will say is that you're going to spend, if you really get engaged, you're going to spend more money. Just plan. Join a club or clubs and become active. Join the ARRL, become active. Ask for help. Seek out an Elmer. Seek out somebody who will mentor you. Use those experiences at the club and with your Elmer to determine what your priorities are and what you want to spend. Buy the best you can afford at the time. And that's really the key. Don't be afraid to sell existing equipment to buy up or buy different. That's perfectly fine. When I started out 30 years ago, my HF station was 20 years old when I started. So that's 50 years. So think about that, that's 50 years. Within 2 years, I had upgraded something that was not 20 years old, but it was 5 years old. Sooner or later, and 30 years later, I have reasonably current equipment. But I didn't buy and didn't invest that dollar amount at the beginning. I invested what I could invest at the time and then sold equipment to buy new equipment. Pay attention to the decibel, especially in purchasing coax. Attenuation can be your best friend or worst enemy. Seek out help for any antenna tower purchases. Just do it. Seek out the help. And in the future, when somebody comes up and says, I got a problem with this, and you had to solve that problem, don't hesitate to reach out and become an Elmer to them. Pay it forward, please. There's some additional material. As I said, there's a list of the ARRL affiliated clubs in Appendix A. Appendix B has got an article on the decibel. Pay attention to that. And then publication subscriptions and services. There are literally thousands of these out there on the internet. I've only put just a couple in there of the ones that I use. So with that, questions, comments, observations? Okay, so the question was, where do you go find out what the value is of old equipment that's 50 or 60 years old? Okay, so what I do is I go out to 3 places. I go out to swapqth.com and look up the equipment and see what people are asking for it. Like an SB 101. I'll use it because that's a piece of equipment that I sold for our club here 6 months ago. So I look at what the value is of that particular thing. I also go out to QRZ and see if somebody was trying to sell it. And most people that are selling it in, they've reworked it all. Okay, I haven't on ours. So what I do is I price and discount that price, knowing that somebody else will have to do that work. But that's where I start. And then I also will look at eham.net to see what the reviews were. Because if it's only got 1 star from 50 years ago, maybe it's not even worth it, just as an observation. Other questions? Pardon me? Pardon me? Sure. There are places that have, so the observation was that there are places that have $21 radio antenna, everything that's kind of the jumpstart kit that you can get on the air with. And the answer is yeah. We have members of our club that have Baofeng radios, and while some of the technical cognoscenti, let's call them that, in ham radio, kind of frown at a Baofeng. Hey, it works. Hey, it gets you on the air. You're talking to hams. That's what we want to do. Now, will you be at a Baofeng forever? I don't know if you like HF, probably not, but hey, it's a place to start. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Is this on?
Hello.
I believe I was in commercial radio. It was my life before now. Thanks. What do you make of the old radios versus the new radios? The technology has changed quite a bit, especially in receivers. Is it worth getting a 40-year-old radio and refurbishing it and using it, or will you be disappointed?
Wow, that's a really good question. So to answer that question, I will tell you that in my shack, I have a Collins S line. And the reason I actually had the Collins S line, but the reason I had the Collins S line was when I was a kid growing up and looking in the catalog, that was the best you could buy in the 1960s. And it was beyond Cadillac. I mean, it was like Maserati kind of thing. And you know, it's a guy in a car kind of thing, and a guy in his radio, a boy in his radio for Hans. But it's that kind of thing, and they still work really good. If you go out to that Sherwood Engineering site and look at the receiver specs on some of that equipment, he's got stuff going back. It works really good. It's really good stuff. And it outperforms some of the newer stuff. Now, I also have an ICOM 7610 SDR, and that works really good too. I don't use the Collins stuff for digital modes because there's just a lot of things I have to do. I have the convenience of the 7610 for just plugging in the USB cord and away I go. So there's something to be said for the convenience. But if there's enough gray hair around here that I can say this, that there are people here who will tell you that real radios glow in the dark, you know. And you know what? I've got a buddy of mine that is the repairs vintage equipment. There's vintage equipment nets, and those radios sound really, really good. In some cases, they have much better audio than the new radios. Yeah, as Jeff pointed out, this is one of those questions where you know yourself. I want to go back and do the vintage. I like doing that, or I really want the convenience of something that's new and plug and play. Since 1995, we've had plug and play.
So, Bill, how often do those Collins go back on the air?
You remember that thing where I said if you're not using it, you have to sell it? I sold the whole S line about 2 years ago to somebody who was going to use it. I mean, to be honest with you, I sold it. Here's the tough part. With that Collins S line, if I had parted it out, I could have gotten about 3 or 4 times its value than selling the S line as it stood still. But I knew the guy that was getting it was going to use it. And to me, it was more important to see the radio in use than it was to see it torn apart in pieces. Other questions?
First of all, Bill, this was an excellent presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really, really good. So I'm a ham. I'm returning. I had a tech license 40 years ago, and I'm just in the last year am getting back into it. I have general now, but anyways, a lot of really good advice here. Buffalo here in the cities, Buffalo, Minnesota. Some of you probably go to that annual. That's where I got a power supply that for like a steel is a broodable linear that at the end of the swap, he basically gave it to me for a good price because he didn't want to carry the thing back out to his car. So yeah. But anyways, my question is, as far as or I guess maybe a comment more of a comment is, I have found a tremendous amount of information out there. 40 years ago, we didn't have the internet, and hard to believe. But the internet is full of knowledgeable hams out there that just with a wealth of information. And I found that really helpful for especially building your own stuff, because a lot of it is step by step and it's with, you know, videos and that sort of thing. So that was the only the Buffalo for swap is great. All the advice is really super. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the comments.